Let's talk about more flavors of autism. If this is the first video that you're coming across on my channel, I have an ongoing series called Autism Flavors, where I go over flavors of autism that I've observed in other people, not as a means to further categorize and stereotype autistic folks and autistic characteristics, but actually in hopes to do the opposite. Through this series, I want to be able to show others how vast the autism spectrum can really look like. And it's one thing to understand that concept in theory, but it's another thing to actually get definitive examples and to actually hear someone describe how these characteristics play out. So when you hear, let's say, that autistic people are rigid, what do you think? Do you think that's someone who plans everything out? Or do you think rigidity can also mean someone who has a very strong moral compass? Or do you think rigidity can also mean that they're really stubborn about being able to go with the flow and make their own choices? The purpose of this series is to essentially show people what the spectrum actually can look like. And again, it is completely normal if you found yourself relating to multiple flavors and little aspects of flavors here and there, or different flavors at different points in your life. I think that's the fun part of making this series. It's not only fun for me to exercise my observational skills and be able to describe these sorts of flavors, but it's also, I think, fun for you guys to hear someone describe yourself and maybe even aspects of yourself that you've never heard other people describe before. It could be very cathartic to hear yourself represented in that way. But with that being said, let's hop into the first flavor. Today's video is brought to you by friends of the channel, Plank. If you're someone who can never find a mattress firm enough, Plank is your answer. Endorsed by the American Chiropractic Association, Plank offers ultra-firm flippable mattresses designed to promote a neutral spine position, improving back health and posture. Plus, Plank ships for free anywhere in the US. Say goodbye to compromising between comfort and support and enjoy the best of both worlds with Plank. I've had my Plank mattress now for a few months, and I will confirm to you guys, my sleep has improved so much. I'm not only able to fall asleep more easily because I'm not constantly shifting my body trying to find a comfortable position, but I'm able to stay asleep throughout the night because I'm not moving as much. That was a huge issue for me for so many years, is just constantly moving, flipping from position to position, only to feel even more uncomfortable, weirdly enough. But I don't have that problem with my Plank Firm Luxe. Apparently, you're supposed to be getting new mattresses every 7 to 10 years because if you've kept a mattress for longer than that, it no longer provides you the support that it's supposed to. So if you guys are in the market for a new mattress and you just don't know where to start, and like me, you struggle with back pain, you prefer a more firm mattress, I got you guys. You could use my code ThoughtSpot for 30% off your purchase. I will leave the link in the description box below. Thank you, Plank, for supporting this video and supporting my back, more importantly, because God knows sitting here for hours on end in front of a computer screen is not the best for my back. Now let's get back to the video. All right, so the first flavor of today's video is called the Reluctantly Crowned Hottie. I always laugh when I say that out loud because it's just so unserious, but I hope that as I dive deeper into the description of this flavor, you guys can understand that it isn't as dumb and unserious as you may think. So the Reluctantly Crowned Hottie is an autist that is born stereotypically attractive. They came out of their mom's womb like that. So this isn't something that they've had to work for, because that's something that we kind of explored in the last autism flavor video through the type A perfectionist, where a part of being that type A perfectionist is needing to achieve perfection in either your achievements, accomplishments, talent, and sometimes that also means the way you look. So I've definitely seen some autists pursue looking perfect and looking conventionally attractive with a lot of intensity. This flavor of autist is the opposite. This sort of autist is reluctantly crowned by society as someone that is respectable, worthwhile, successful, desirable, but it's not because they tried to be crowned, and it's not because they even want to be crowned. If anything, I feel like this sort of autist can tend to be very, very lonely. There's almost like a disinterest towards the way they look. If anything, I think their attractiveness is a burden, because it's something that they never had a choice in. And how other people respond to their attractiveness is also something that they don't have control over either. The difficult aspect of being this flavor of autist is that on the surface, it sounds really, really dumb and ungrateful if these types of people were to say things like, I'm so tired of being hot, like everyone just wants to be me or be with me, and it's such a burden. And I think that's the nuance I really, really want to pin down here, is the objectification of a person through their looks. So we often explore how other people objectify people who don't look stereotypically attractive, and how when you're not stereotypically attractive, people have a tendency to assume that you're not as successful, you're not as friendly. And on the other side of that coin, just because someone looks good, other people are more willing to give them the time of day, validate their feelings. But what we fail to really talk about is that both sides of the coin get objectified. It's just the attractive person has less wiggle room to talk about the struggle that comes with their objectification, because they somewhat benefit from this sort of objectification of people. And so there's this air of, you're not allowed to complain, because what are you going to complain about?
What is the idea of being a celebrity or being loved in that way? Is that attractive to you, or is that...
Again, it just seems like a part of it, and one that it would be just so unappreciative and out of touch to be like, that's no fun.
But I think it's very therapeutic to detach yourself from your own judgments and opinions in situations like this and actually see what's happening for what it is. Being objectified, even if you are attractive, is still a very dehumanizing experience. Yes, people are willing to see you and pay attention to you, but only to a certain extent. It's almost like they only want to interact with you for the sake of fulfilling some sort of selfish need that they have. There's this weird ulterior motive of, I want to feel validated through experiencing you. I feel like they tend to be a lot more reserved, quiet, and keep to themselves because they don't feel safe to share themselves and their energy with people. They don't really trust other people to handle interacting with them on a human level. I feel like you would have to earn this person's trust to open up to you and share aspects of themselves with you, because they want to see whether or not you're even willing to connect with them as a person and see through the external facade. I don't know what it is about stereotypically attractive people, but as a society, we tend to think that they are not humans. We almost see them as an idea of a person, but that's the dehumanizing part.
You might actually make a perfect Christian Grey in the film adaptation of this erotic fictional book called 𝗪 of Grey.
Right.
It's a 27-year-old billionaire who's into bondage and domination, who's alternately sweet but also creepy. How do you feel about that? Would you be interested?
I don't know. You should maybe get, you're a good agent.
This autist, I feel like, is deep down very lonely, and deep down is looking to authentically connect with people about their actual special interests and talk about things that they're really passionate about, but they don't really get that luxury in a weird, ironic way. And so I find that these sort of autists usually have to lean on a very specific special interest and throwing themselves into it, because it gives them more of a chance to be involved in something that is meaningful for them and around other people that also finds it meaningful. A lot of these times, these autists are like enigmas. They're this person you see from afar and you admire them and you want to be around them, but also you know that they're so intimidating to approach because they're very boundaried and they don't necessarily want to connect with everyone. It's almost like a cat in a sense. Like you really want to pet the cat, but cats don't necessarily trust you and don't want you to touch them. And so you kind of just look at them from afar and appreciate them from afar. All right, so this next flavor of autist is called a spiritual stickler. So with this sort of autist, I feel like they're drawn to religion for the belief system and for the rules rather than the actual spiritual aspect of it. And it's not that they don't care about the spiritual aspect of it. It's just they almost find solace in a spiritual community or a religious community for the structure as the primary source of nourishment. And I think the spirituality aspect of it is where they get their social and emotional needs met, because it would be hard to get those needs met as an autistic person outside of that context. It's hard to just go and connect with anyone on the street, at the grocery store, or at work, right? But when you go to church or when you are a part of a spiritual community, there's already this pre-consented or agreed upon contract that you're all there to connect to an invisible aspect of your human experience that ties into your soul, your spirit, your belief system. And so for these spiritual sticklers, I find that they almost follow their religion or their spiritual beliefs blindly, not because it's necessarily something they fully resonate with on a soul level, but it's just a lifestyle at that point. It's the structure itself of the spiritual belief or practice that gives them the framework of who they are and how they interact with other people. And so when something happens that challenges their belief, I feel like they don't know how to process that healthily. They don't know how to hold nuance in a way where, let's say, they have a person that they really look up to within this spiritual community and they almost worship this person. They really value them. And let's say one day they find out that this person, committed a crime or cheated on their spouse. This specific flavor of autist, upon learning about that sort of contradiction, would almost malfunction. And it's to a point where they don't just question the person, they question the whole belief system altogether. Like, everything I believed in was a sham. I thought that you were a good person and you were a pillar of this community and you're not. So what is this belief anymore? Like, why should I even believe in it anymore? What's the purpose of this community anymore? And they start to spiral very quickly. And again, it's because that's what happens when that sort of spiritual practice or community is not just a resource, but it's the actual framework that keeps your life up and running. All right, so this next flavor of autist is called the Anthropologist. This flavor of autist is someone who on the surface seems like a very emotionally intelligent and socially in tune person. But the weird paradox is that they're actually a lot more objective and mechanical than people think, because they approach human observation and human connection from almost a scientific point of view. It's almost like they're constantly taking notes and tracking the patterns, understanding the why, what causes something, how something plays out. People are their special interest. For these sort of autists, they could find themselves hyper-focusing on someone or a group of people. And it's not because they necessarily get attached to the person or people, but it's more so like an intellectual cognitive stimulation, maybe even stimulation on a soul level where, oh my God, these people are so interesting. I've never seen this before. I want to learn everything about it, the ins and outs of everything. I just want to take notes. I want to soak myself in it. I want to be immersed in it. And I just want to learn. And a lot of the times with these autists, once they've fully digested and understood the group of people or person, It's like they've gotten what they need, which is a concept and an understanding, and they could finally move on to learning about the next group of people. And I feel like for these sorts of autists, a lot of the times people could feel very, very discombobulated by them, because when they see this autist jump really vivaciously into learning about you and wanting to know everything and wanting to spend time, you mistake that for them wanting to be a part of your life on a connection level. And yes, that's also a part of it. But what becomes confusing is when they're ready to move on, you almost feel a sense of, wait, what happened here? I thought we were friends. Why are you not around anymore or as interested? And it's hard to explain, because for that autist, it's like, I was interested in you and I learned so much and my time with you was valuable, but I'm not meant to stay here, right? Once anthropologists learn about a group of people, they don't just stay there. Their job is to keep going around and collecting data, right? To continue the process of learning. And so I think people oftentimes are socialized to want to make connections and keep it going indefinitely. When these autists leave, it feels like a sense of betrayal. This anthropologist flavor of autist makes people feel so seen and so validated because of their genuine curiosity that I think the people getting studied by the anthropologist almost gets emotionally attached to the anthropologist more than that autist is getting attached to them, because they're approaching the relationship dynamic from different perspectives. The people being studied feel seen, validated, valued. The person studying them feels very curious, very excited and passionate. But the difference is one has a timeline and one doesn't. One wants to keep it going indefinitely, and the other one was only there temporarily to begin with. And so when this anthropologist leaves, a lot of people can mistake them as being heartless or using them or being cold and detached, but then they get confused because their time together wasn't cold or detached. So it's like, how can we have spent such a meaningful time together and all of a sudden you're gone? But what they don't realize is that if the anthropologist wanted to have you in their life indefinitely, they wouldn't have approached the relationship the way that they did, because they maybe wouldn't have made all of it about you, right? They were there to learn about you. And so in a way, everything was about you explaining why you do something and showing them your lifestyle and them actually learning. But if you think about it, that's a very one-sided relationship dynamic, because do you know anything about the anthropologist autist? Probably not. They probably aren't even interested in sharing about themselves. And so I feel like for these anthropologists sort of autists, they don't necessarily have an ongoing definitive friend group. They usually have like a very small select few people that they keep actually close to them long term. But even then, it's not like this ongoing back and forth relationship. It's usually like check-ins with each other. We're not necessarily interested in knowing what you're doing every day and what you're eating. We're interested in your overall growth as a person and who you are. Because we're data takers, we don't thrive well in everyday interactions. We actually thrive better in really potent and intentional, but very few and far between interactions with our loved ones. And so when we jump into these social groups or a person's life and we're very intense about learning about them, people mistake it as us being interested in being a part of their lives without realizing that we're only there to learn about you, understand you, and then once that's done, move on to learning about other people. And so I feel like with these sorts of autists, what is very common is that people want them in their lives, people want to be close to them forever, but these autists don't necessarily want that same thing. This next flavor of autist is called the sheltered idealist. The sheltered idealist flavor is an autist that is very idealistic. Everything that they're idealistic about is, in theory, really positive and very pure.
Oh, I can change every day. I can change my mind. I can say something and then regret and be much better the day after. I can change every day and figure out who I am, and that's the beauty. I don't even need to know what I want to do for work. And it's easy to be very safe in yourself when you're not analyzing yourself and just let go of the chance that people might be analyzing you.
It's going to be very hard to talk about this flavor of autist without talking about privilege, because I do think that privilege does play a huge role in forming this specific flavor of autist. Because again, intersectionality, right? There's only so much of your authentic self that you can express, even as an autistic person, if you are someone who falls under multiple marginalized communities and identities. Because if your life really does revolve around survival, your moral values are revolving around survival, all of your choices revolve around survival, then obviously you don't get to express certain aspects of your autistic traits with full freedom and full embodiment, right? And I want us to really, really hold space for nuance here, like really, really hold space. Just because one person doesn't necessarily go through the same sort of hardships that other people do doesn't mean that they're less valid in talking about certain things. If someone wants to say, make sure you're just sincere and you honor yourself, of course everyone would want to choose to live like that. What they don't realize is that there's people out there, because of the way they look like or the circumstances that they came from, where if they lived life with those same values the way that you do, they would not be thriving. They would actually be scrutinized more, judged more.
I think it's because I've never thought about it. I never wonder who I am. I don't think it's my business to know. I don't care who I am. I just am. And the less you kind of stress with putting yourself in a box, and the more you just give yourself total freedom. And it's easy to be very safe in yourself when you're not analyzing yourself and just let go of the chance that people might be analyzing you and let go of the control we feel like we need to have on others' impression of us. It doesn't matter.
What's so difficult about this conversation is that it's not so much about validity and more so about the depth in which you're able to understand how that advice is able to be expressed and applied for different types of people in different circumstances. And I think this is why it's so important as fellow autists to be discerning and careful about who you're watching and who you're following, because you don't want to unconsciously enable resentment within yourself, and you don't want to unconsciously hold yourself to standards that in theory sounds really great, but doesn't necessarily work for people like you. I think it's important on one hand to validate parts of yourself that may be triggered, but also consider maybe you have to find a better resource, or at least wait for yourself to be in a better place where you're not in survival mode all the time to be able to listen to people like that without feeling triggered. Because if you're in a bad place where you're still focused on surviving, you're not going to be able to hear these sorts of autists talk about these ideals without inherently resenting or pitying yourself for not being in the same starting point as this autist. You'll always see the disconnect between where you guys come from and what you guys are allowed to do and at what capacity you guys are allowed to express yourself. That's just something to keep in mind. I mean, for me, I have to keep that in mind because I'm a person of color, so I can't necessarily watch certain autists that were raised, let's say, conventionally attractive and more easily accepted, and in family backgrounds that provided more support and understanding without feeling like there's some sort of disconnect between us. Because my journey of self-actualizing and self-accepting and expressing my authenticity and fully embodying my authenticity is going to be done in a completely different way than that autist. Does that make sense? So even though we might have the same ideals, the way we understand it and express it may be different. And the way that we get to the point of being able to express it may be completely different. So one person might be born into a life where they can inherently start expressing it without any sort of pushback. But for me, now at the age of 29, am I able to start that journey that they started out of the womb? I say this because a lot of the times the autists that we see spearheading the movement around autism acceptance are people who come from a somewhat privileged background, where even if all they had was support and not necessarily money, support for a lot of autists is a luxury. Like, just having their family understand that they're autistic and that they are going to have different needs, that sadly is a luxury. A lot of autists are not born with that. And that's something to keep in mind. A lot of the times, the sheltered idealist, the autists that are talking about these idealistic ways to be an autistic person in society, they're oftentimes in their place because they come from a place of privilege. They're talking about those ideals because they got to live by those ideals from an early age. They got to live by those ideals relatively easily. And it's not to say that they didn't struggle. It's not to say that they didn't experience alienation and discrimination. It's just one of those things where, yes, we are all struggling because we live in a society that's very ableist and inherently harmful to autistic folks. But at the same time, I think it's important to understand that the depth at which we're struggling is also different, right? Yes, we're all carrying pain. Yes, we're all fighting the fight. Yes, we all live with that layer of grit and struggle. But at the same time, they showed up with armor and a sword, whereas we showed up in our underwear with a wooden stick. We're not prepared the same way. Alrighty, you guys, let me know in the comment section down below. Did any of today's flavor resonate with you? And did any of the flavors resonate with someone in your life that you know? Don't be afraid to make your voice heard and share your experiences, your thoughts. Discourse is not only a great way for you to be a part of the community, it's also a great way for you to start expressing yourself to other people who will feel encouraged by you sharing and will maybe even feel encouraged to share their experiences as well. I oftentimes say that autistic mental health struggles stem from not having enough people to healthily attune to and share with, rather than depression itself or anxiety itself. Be sure to give today's video a like if you've enjoyed it. And those with PDA, you already know, make sure you guys take some time today to drink some water, eat some food, and take yourself on a lovely walk. I know it's springtime, and I don't know what that means for you guys, but the sun's out, the birds are chirping. Maybe go on a nice stroll or a nice meander. Stay regulated, and I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.